All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our first Go Digital webinar. Today we're going to take a look at how scientific research was impacted by the current COVID-19 pandemic, and how digital tools can help in these times make scientists more operational. I'm Clement, I'm CEO of SciNote, and I will be your host for today's webinar. I'm really excited to share with you what we have learned so far, and also to introduce to you our guests, our valued customers, for them to share their experience as well. Today's webinar will be of three parts. So first part, I will just do a short introduction on what's the current situation and the challenges. We'll move then to the second part with our guests, with our panelists for the roundtable discussion. And then for the third part, we will be answering your questions that you will have throughout this webinar. So if you have a question, you can ask it at any time. In the menu at the bottom of your screen, find a Q&A button and just ask your question there. If you have a sensitive question, you can ask it directly to the panelist, or you just submit the question anonymously. And if we in the end have too many questions, we will follow up with you directly via email and provide you with an answer there. Webinar is being recorded. We will upload the webinar after it's over online. And we'll share the links with you. So no need to take notes, and yeah, feel free to share the recording with anybody else. Okay, before we dive in, I would just like to ask you since we can't see you, to take just a moment and answer one simple question. This will give myself and our panelists a little bit better idea who is listening, and it can steer the discussion later on. So you should have the poll available right now, and it will stay open throughout the introduction right up to the roundtable discussion. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our three panelists. It's my pleasure to welcome all three of you. Let me start with Katherine Williams. She is research associate at Agricen Sciences. So Agricen is a company that uses modern technology of life sciences to advanced agriculture. Next is Sabrina Rottal, who is application specialist at R&D and analytical development at VelaLabs. VelaLabs is a big company offering all kinds of lab services all around the world. And last but not least, Markus Frohme, professor of molecular biology at Technical University of Applied Sciences from Wildau, Germany. Markus is working on one hand with students, but on the other hand, his department does a lot of basic and applicative science, which has resulted in two spin-offs from his departments to two companies. So it's a very diverse panel coming from US and Europe, both companies that were shut down, companies that were working. So we should have a pretty good representation of the current situation in the pandemic, and should have a really nice discussion later on. Okay, so during the pandemic, about 1/3 of scientists, both from academic research to industry, were working in the labs. About 2/3 were staying at home. So the ones working in the labs, their priority was to minimize the time that they spent in the lab. And this means doing most of the preparation for the lab work from home, as well as after the lab work is done, writing the journal entry into the journal, analyzing of the results and things like that. So this, as much as possible of this should happen at home. We had some very nice experiences with customers that are using SciNote, that have implemented digital tools that showed that this was very impactful at their work, that they were able to minimize the time spent in the lab by using these tools, and also to have all the data available when they were doing the data analysis at home. On the other hand, for those that were not able or couldn't work in the lab in this time, having the data access from basically anywhere was absolutely crucial, because research have shown that scientists that were working from home at this point they kept busy. They were working either on writing scientific paper, writing a patent, applying for funding, or just doing data and statistical analysis. So for all of this, it's really important to have digital tools that are connected, that provide you with the data, and last but not least, also enable much better cooperation, which has also been hindered due to us not having direct contact with one another. So as reports from other industries show, digital tools have one of the biggest impacts on COVID-19 recovery, and World Economic Forum is actually urging investors to support companies that enable digital economy. So with that in mind, I would like to ask you, Katherine, what was your experience during the time of pandemics, and how did digital tools help you? Were there any specific digital tools that you implemented that were particularly impactful? Anything you can share with us?
Sure. I would say, so first of all, it's important. Our company did not shut down because we're considered an essential business, but we have had to, obviously we've still had a lot of interruptions. We've had either people out with symptoms, in which case, they've been quarantining at home, or some people, including myself, are kind of on a altered schedule because of childcare issues and things like that. So I think the main thing that has been is we've seen a lot more need to be flexible, to prioritize what absolutely has to get done. What are the most important things? And then what can wait? So making sure that, just a lot of prioritization of goals and things like that. And I think the biggest thing that we've seen, that the key to a lot of it is just communication, is making sure that, you can't assume anything. You have to make sure, in order to kind of keep everything going and keep everyone on the same page, and make sure you have a lot of backups, because you can't assume that someone you worked with today is going to be here the next day, and kind of have a plan for what's going to happen in case it goes wrong. And we've kind of been tried out some different digital tools. And a big one for us has been actually the Microsoft Teams. We've used the Microsoft Suite a lot, and that's actually one reason we really like SciNote, is because it incorporates a lot of those. The Microsoft, you can use them a lot in the program, but we've been working a lot more with the Teams and like the chat and the video meetings and stuff. And it took a little while for everyone to get on board, but I actually think it's worked pretty well. And I see us carrying over. I think even once all of this is done, I think we'll still keep using some of those, so that's good. And then I think another big thing has been the ability to do a lot of your, as Clement mentioned, do a lot of your experiment prep and recording at home, especially for me, because I've kind of working some from home. Your lab time becomes precious, so you don't want to waste it on writing protocols or recording data, so you get in, you do what you need to do, and you get out. And then when you're at home, you can go through and update and still have access and be able to share it with anyone, my supervisor or whoever. Sorry, I was having trouble hearing you. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, I was muted, sorry. So thank you, Katherine. Sabrina, maybe just a question for you, like how did your company how was your company impacted by the lockdown?
Yeah. So our company was divided into 3 teams, how to say. So we have one home office team where the people all are working in home office and are not allowed to go to the lab and to the company. And we also have 2 teams for the lab. So one is working from Monday till Wednesday and the other one from Thursday till Saturday. And we have to divide the work between those 2 teams to have the most effort in our work and go on with our projects here. And we also used some digital tools to communicate. We also used it before. We Basecamp for communication and project management tools. We can give to-dos to other people through this Basecamp software. And so it's much easier to communicate with each other. And also we use GoToMeetings for calls to discuss some things. We have to divide our work properly because some people are evaluating data, the other ones write protocols in the ELN, the other ones do the lab work. So yeah, the people who are working in home office have also to handle all the work between the kids. So many people have children at home and look after the children. And so the working day is not only from 8 to 2 as for me, because I'm only working for 30 hours a week, but also from 8 to the evening. So yeah, it changes that much.
Okay. Yeah, Marcus, same question for you. Like I know for you has been even more difficult, but
yeah.
How did it impact your department, and what tools do you think helped with the whole situation?
Well, first it affected my department, as the department head was kind of switched off since I suffered my personal shutdown due to an infection for like 2 weeks. On the other hand, I have an interesting perspective as I'm head of the SciNote and part of the Corona Crisis Council. So I have seen how the whole university was dealing with the problem. But coming back to your question, the laboratory, which means it's scientists, and I do not have a very tight control about what they do. After the shutdown of the university, some kind of like left home for holiday, and others really started, I had the impression, to work even harder on writing grant applications, publications, etc. And just today I spoke to one of my scientists, because we are just again now starting slowly to turn on the university and the laboratories again. I spoke to one, and he said, well, I really kind of suffered access to my data, because I have a computer at home, I have a computer in the office, and I have several computers where I have my data. And since we have not installed an ELN completely, we are just in the transition of getting into it. It was kind of a bit hard for these persons. Actually, I did not keep a very close contact to my staff due to my personal situation. But I have learned a lot about communication systems, because in the university we had to keep the teaching going on. And the university turned from, I would say, like 0 online teaching to, in like 3 weeks or so, 100% online teaching, which worked very well, because we are kind of very far in digitalization. We are a small university. It worked pretty well, but I learned a lot about different team communication instruments, online teaching instruments, etc. But I think we are not going into the details of this.
Yeah, I mean, Markus, please. I mean, this is you're directly on the next question. Like, so, how were there any other tools? Like, were there any other good practices, let's say, that you've implemented during this time that you would, you know, that you would recommend to the listeners that they should do that maybe have a similar situation to yours?
Well, Katherine mentioned Microsoft Teams. Actually, this was for me the worst just after Skype. A lot of my colleagues have very good experiences when teaching with Big Blue Button. I haven't tried out. So I would say Zoom is a very nice instrument which we are using now. I prefer it to do it a little bit different, not such in such a direct interaction with the students, like more preparing little films or so. And well, with my stuff, I really use just simple Skype contacts. And yeah, well, these were the communication instruments. I have to say we don't have, I would say, more instruments which we are currently using.
Okay. Okay, so question for Sabrina, for you. Is there any practices, you were mentioning dividing the team into several groups. Were there any good practices, anything that you would recommend to the rest of us, what to do in such times?
Yes, use digital tools for communication. I think it works really fine. We use SciNote since I think it was October, since we started the test phase for SciNote. Now it is completely implemented in the R&D department, and it works really well with the ELN, because I can every time at home look at the data and the work which was done in the lab and see what is going on in the lab. And also we use these Basecamp tools. There are different tools as Microsoft Teams or any other where you can communicate with each other, where you can make teams and projects and communicate only with a few people. This works really good for us. Yeah, okay. And also like Skype or GoToMeetings, this is also a good tool to communicate with other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm gathering from what you were sharing now is kind of like you were using digital tools for sort of three areas. One would be like the project management, having an overview of what's happening, organizing everyone. Then the other set of tools would be like the communication tools, just like as you said, like one thing is the tools that help us communicate via like having, as you said, like either Skype or WebEx or Zoom. But also things like Slack or Basecamp, MS Teams, so some of them serve multiple purposes, but the communication being the strong other part. And the third thing, if I understand correctly, is tools that help you share the data, particularly you, Markus, were mentioning this, that was hard for some people who didn't have access.
Yes.
So maybe Katherine, question for you. Is there anything else that you've implemented? Is there anything else that you would like to add on the list, or any other good practice that you've implemented during this time?
No, mostly for us, it's been the Microsoft Teams and the SciNote, and then just the extra effort in coordination and making sure that everyone is up to date and making sure that everyone knows what's going on, and then that you've got your critical activities identified, and you've got backups for all of those people to make sure that they're accomplished. That's been pretty much it for us.
Okay. Okay, and then okay, so you've all gone through, or Marcus, you are going through the implementation of electronic lab notebooks as, let's say, at least from the data standpoint, the central part of going digital for laboratories. For a lot of people that we also talk to, we hear a lot of concerns because it's a mental change that you have to do, it's a culture change that you have to do, because everybody that went to university, we were always told, this is the notebook, take it to the lab and write everything in. So it's been like that for centuries basically, and now we are changing this. So it's difficult, people don't like change. So my question for you, maybe starting with Katherine again, what were some good practices that you did when implementing an ELN, or speaking broadly about changing the strategy of the company for going digital, for doing everything electronically? So just the process of implementation and any good practices, like are there any advices that you would give to somebody there, like where to start, what to do, what to do to minimize the effort and to minimize, let's say, the resistance within the company? Sure.
Well, I think it was honestly helpful for us in that our CSO basically, she said, we're going to digital electronic lab notebooks, where we are going to do this. And she kind of got together a committee to pick out which one, but it was basically decided for us, okay, we're going to make this change. And so I think that helped a lot. And then it wasn't like, oh, maybe we should and maybe we shouldn't, but it was kind of something that she identified was as a critical activity for our company. So we kind of got a little committee together, and I think one of the most helpful things was the first thing we did was identify, like, these are the things that we have to have. These are the most important 5 or 6 items for us. And then we kind of went and started looking at, different options, and we pulled down we looked at a lot of websites, and we kind of identified 2 or 3 ELNs that we thought we were interested in. And then we contacted the different people for them, and we asked for, trial. I think that was really crucial, was to have a list of goals before we even started looking at different ones. So that we knew, because you kind of get into where you start looking at different systems, and there's things that are nice and there's things that will help you work more efficiently. But if you're not meeting the things that are absolutely critical, then that's not even an option and you shouldn't consider it anymore. So that was very helpful to have that kind of goal-directed list. And then we just spent a lot of time. We spent 2 or 3 months trying out different systems and talking about what we liked and didn't like. And at the end, we basically just took a vote. It was, simple voting, which one we thought was the best system. Okay.
What about, like, just by, you mentioned, like, there was a committee, list of clear goals. I think this is all really good practice. But what about during, like, the phase of implementation, or even after the implementation, once the people really had to go on board? Was there anything, I assume you had people that were really excited, but also people that were reluctant of doing this. How did you make all of those people come together?
I think honestly, everyone at Agricen was a pretty good sport, or at least they seem to be. I think we really tried to spend a lot of time figuring out how it would all work out before we started the implementation. And that meant, actually, like, drawing out a list of all the projects, seeing how everyone works together, because it's easy for something to work in theory, but when you actually get down to, like, oh, this person needs to be on this team and this person needs to be on this person, it starts getting complicated. So we it was a little tedious, but when we actually sat down and actually looked at how everything would look and how it would be laid out and how, because one of the things we really liked and that was crucial for us is like the signing and co-signing, being able to, to sign tasks and how that would actually work on a day-to-day basis. There were some issues that we kind of had to work out in the implementation, but so far it's worked all right.
Okay. Okay, Sabrina, same to you. Like, you went through this exercise already in October. You said that you are now fully integrated with SciNote. How was that journey for you?
Yeah, in principle, Katherine said mostly everything we also did. So we set our goals in the beginning. So as we decided to use electronic lab notebook, we had to choose what do we want from this ELN and where do we want to use it. So we decided to use it in R&D, but also to use it in GMP. For GMP, we are not that far, but for R&D, we implemented it. And then we made a list where we decided which goals we have to meet. So for R&D, we want these particular parts, and for GMP, some other things are necessary. And with these goals, we searched for a good ELN, which is suitable for us, and tested it. Only a few people tested the 3 to 4 ELNs, and then we decided to go with 1 or 2 ahead and tested it also with our lab members. And we communicated a lot with our lab members to see what are the good things of the ELN and what are the bad things, what could be better, and also communicated with SciNote to see if there could be an improvement of some features. Yeah, and afterwards, our lab team was okay with 1 ELN. There were some topics which were not as satisfying as we wished in the beginning, but I think we come there with time. And yeah, for GMP, we go ahead with testing it. There are other people who are integrated into this project, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Markus, you are maybe the freshest in the implementation phase. I know that your lab has, well, the people that have started implementing it were really eager and adopted it really fast. But maybe now that you've seen it, how was the broader acceptance of the team in your department?
Well, I would say if you are working with scientists in an academic environment, you really have to catch them. It's not that you, like in a company, you tell them from today on you're using this system. And as you said, there were people which were really eager, favoring digitalization. They tried out several systems in the beginning, convinced me, tried systems on small projects in competition, presented this in the group. Then we decided, okay, we would like to go with SciNote. But I think what was really helpful that we started some projects around. So there was a master thesis, you know, about interoperability of ELNs. We were working with these wireless pipette integration. So people really became in favor of this, means they became a bit enthusiastic that this is really a cool tool and helpful. And there is another issue which is important, especially for me as I'm also a teacher. how easy you can teach students in use of such a system. And I think SciNote has a very good system with the academy to really well bring it to the youngest users.
Okay. So sort of to summarize, what I've heard from you, well, one was like, okay, it's really important to have the communication, and that, let's say, the leadership has a buy-in, and that they communicate why this is important and what we're doing. I understand it's different when it comes to academia, but Marcus, you were, I think, on board from the beginning, and that had a big impact. And I think I really like what you, both Katherine and Sabrina, mentioned, like to have clear goals. I think this is really important because digitalization is a vast topic. ELNs have a lot of functions and you might not need all of them. So having a clear goal and also will not only help you evaluate which product is the right for you, but will keep everybody on track. So I really like that. And then giving people the choice, like that they can go out, test, give their opinion which system to use. And what I found interested from Sabrina and Katherine, to have the examples for the exact use case, so day-to-day work that you are doing, showing that to the users is really important. Okay, so with that, if nobody has anything to add to this, I would like to go to the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions already. So please, anyone that has a question, please feel free to write them down. We have 7 at the moment. So we'll try to get as far as we can. But before that, I would just like to ask you for another poll. This will help us understand also a little bit more what your needs are. That will help us shape the future webinars if we're going to make them, and help us provide you with useful content also after this webinar is over. So you should be seeing the poll any minute now. Okay, and as far as the questions, so we have a few questions already. So let's maybe just start with this one, which is sort of continuation of what we were discussing now. So what would be your advice to motivate and engage the whole team to become familiar with the ELN and embrace the change? So we kind of answered already this. Is there anything else that you would like to add in terms of the motivation when you explain to the team why, or like, is it in your experience when you talk to the team, or when the supervisor talked to the team and explained why we need to go digital, why we need to change the way things are done, was there, in your impression, like, was it understanding? Did people understand why this is necessary? But were just reluctant to change, or do you think they didn't understand why science has to move in that way? Maybe Katherine, we can start with you.
Sure. I think most people understood why the EL in general was a good idea. It takes a lot of time and investment and energy to learn something new and to figure out, but I think it was pretty clear what the advantages are from the beginning, especially because we have different teams in our company, but we work so much cross team that, I mean, obviously you're not going to go into someone's office and pick up their lab notebook and start looking through it. But if you can go and see, oh, this person did this and they got these results, and I'm going to now take that product and do something based on their results, it makes it very easy and much faster to kind of communicate those important results.
Okay, so showing them exactly how this will benefit them directly, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Marcus, Sabrina, do you agree with that, or you have anything to add?
Yes.
Sorry, Sabrina,
okay.
Go ahead.
So maybe I want to add that the planning phase is also important in our company, and we can include all these planning things and also the results and everything in one system, and everybody can look at it. so everybody knows what is going on.
Okay, Markus?
So maybe I just add that it was very nice that people from the group explained what are the advantages, and not me as a boss, as a superior, just explained it and told people now you're using it, or in the future you're using it. So those users convinced the others. This is, I think, more important than the boss saying, okay, you have to.
Yeah, I agree from our standpoint, because we implement a lot of digitalization within our company, and it's the same. Like, even though you said, as you said before, like it's maybe different in a company where the boss just says, okay, we do it like this, but in the end, you need to have the buy-in from the people and from the employees, because yeah, if they don't approve, you know, you will have a mess in the data one way or another. Markus, you mark here that you would like to answer this question. Is it really a good time?
This was
Oh, it was a mistake? Okay. Okay, so maybe just, okay, a question. Is it really a good time to implement ELN, given that we are in the COVID situation, and we are struggling to keep operations afloat? So if I may start with this question, so I think it's really important to start implementing ELNs. Is it a good time or not? It really depends on your organization. Maybe it's a good time, maybe it's not. But as soon as things go back to normal, I would argue that it's really important to put digitalization, not just ELN, but digitalization and the way, the mindset that digitalization brings into the company at the forefront of any strategy. So, and if you are working in the lab, electronic lab notebooks should be there. But yeah, maybe a question for you, Katherine, since yeah, you were working in this time. Is now a good time for a company like yours to start implementing digital tools, or would you rather wait until things go back to normal?
I think it's a good time to start. You know, if you've identified a digital tool like an ELN is something you might be interested in, now people might have more time at home or time away to kind of investigate, to try out different things, to try, you know, and do that kind of legwork that it takes to figure out what's the best choice. I think this is probably a good time for that. And then it just depends on individual companies or labs to figure out when's the best time to actually do the implementation.
Okay, Sabrina, maybe it was different for you because you were working from home. Is there anything you would like to add to Katherine's answer?
Yeah, I think it is a good time if the ELN is already implemented at this time or tested in a way, because some people have not so much time to do these things for implementation, to communicate that much with all the testing members and so on. So it depends on the company and how workload is.
Okay. Okay, then, okay, the question from Sebastian. So what is the best practice to use SciNote for dry lab from your point of view for bioinformatics, computational structural biology, molecular dynamics simulations, etc.? So does any one of you have any experience with that?
No,
not so much.
Okay, maybe Sebastian, what I can add to this, and we'll provide you with a more detailed answer, but just like from now, what we've seen is that computational biologists are often disconnected from the wet lab work, which in the end affects traceability and reproducibility. So in that sense, it can be very nice to integrate SciNote for both bioinformaticians and biologists, let's say, but really depends on your situation. And maybe just to comment on the first question, which is which is about, we tried SciNote and found it was not easy to use, was difficult to upload results, and that it's more a summary report than notes. So I would just like to emphasize two things. It's really, really important to understand that there is not one electronic lab notebook for everybody. It's really important, as the guys have explained as well, the panelists, that you have clear goals and do the research and do the testing and have the choices. There are a lot of vendors out there. SciNote is just one of them. So it's totally reasonable that SciNote does not fulfill your goals. It really depends on your organization and your needs. But nevertheless, I would argue that now it's really a very good time to start implementing digital solutions, regardless of who the vendors are. Just make sure that you understand what your needs are and find the best product to fit your needs. Okay, maybe one last question before we close. There was okay. Let's do this one. Okay, so how is SciNote doing with integration in published journal articles? This is useful for data supplementation and can speed up peer review process. So that's maybe a good point. What SciNote does already is you can export things from SciNote in a Word document. So it makes it, let's say, less copy pasting. But we also have the AI Manuscript Writer, which is a tool that comes with SciNote, which helps you create drafts of scientific papers. So that can speed up the process as well. You can try Manuscript Writer for free, I believe. So maybe that's one way to start. But Marcus, this is maybe more relevant for you because you're coming from academia. I assume that Katherine and Sabrina are not publishing a lot of articles. So Marcus, maybe if you can comment on this question as well.
Well, you remember I suggested the submit to Nature button. So no, actually it's really helpful if you have your data already formatted by your ELN in a way which makes it easy to submit it to whatever journal. We haven't tried out this function already.
Okay. Okay, and maybe just a comment. I saw that there were a few questions addressing the instrument integration. So instrument integration is something that ultimately is the dream. We want that all instruments, that everything that produces scientific data is automatically connected to electronic lab notebooks. Unfortunately, SciNote is not there yet, that this kind of integrations would be offered off the shelf. Neither are other electronic lab notebooks, but this is something that we will be working on. We do have the first instruments that are integrated, and these are the smart pipettes, smart Bluetooth connected pipettes from Gilson. So this was the first instrument that we integrated, but we do plan to integrate others, as well as integrate with companies that do instrument integration. So this is something that we are working towards, but it's a big challenge because it's a lot of different instruments out there that scientists are using, and we would need to integrate. Okay, so we have some more questions, but we are out of time. So I would like just to thank everybody. I would like maybe just to close with take-home messages. So what we learned so far. So so just to repeat, like we saw that software is being used in these times mostly for project management, communication within the team, and data sharing. So these were sort of the main areas of how software can help, and on how to bring software, how to bring digital strategy and new tools into the team. Couple of really nice points that the panelists made there. So communication from the start is really crucial, keeping the whole team involved, setting really clear goals for implementation, and giving people choice, understanding that there are multiple vendors out there, and yeah, so really understanding what you want to do, and giving out examples. This is another reason why we ask the last question. So what you saw from the poll, we will see what are the, let's say, the main needs from our users, from the participants at this webinar, and we will prepare examples that show for this exact situations how we think it's the best way to use SciNote. All right, so thank you everyone. Thank you to the panelists for taking the time in this weird times, let's say. Thank you for all the participants. As I said, we'll make the recording available, and if we don't hear each other before, then we'll talk at the next webinar where we'll have some interesting content for you. So thank you, panelists, and have a nice week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.